This week on ICN, the stories you should have heard, but didn't. State of Pennsylvania commercial threatens their own citizens. Federal government outpacing private sector in job growth. The Fed secretly lobbies against Audit the Fed bill. 1 in 8 Americans depends on the government to put food on their table. Those stories and more next on Informed Citizen News. Hello and welcome to ICN, Informed Citizen News, May 9th, 2010. Before we begin, we wanted to let you know that we will not post a broadcast next week. We'll be back with a new report in 2 weeks. A quote most often attributed to Thomas Jefferson is, "When the people fear the government, there is tyranny. When the government fears the people, there is liberty."
Your name is Tom. You live just off of 5th Street. Nice car, Tom. Nice house. What's not so nice is you owe Pennsylvania $4,212 in back taxes. Listen, Tom, we can make this easy. Pay online by June 18th, and we'll skip your penalty and take half off your interest. Because, Tom, we do know who you are.
This state of Pennsylvania commercial is clearly a form of government intimidation. Not only is the state scaring the public into paying claimed overdue taxes, but the overt message is that Big Brother in the digital age can track you and assess your lifestyle. Comments about nice car and nice house are a dig at the target's apparent wealth. From 100,000 feet, the state knows you have the ability to pay the taxes that they claim you owe. Or they may judge that your lifestyle exceeds your claimed income on tax filings. The income tax is the most invasive form of tax, as the government knows where and how you make an income. They know how you're planning for retirement, what stocks you invest in, and how much you put away for your child's college education, whether you have a business on the side, and what charities you contribute to. It's debatable whether taxes are necessary in a floating fiat currency system, but assume for a moment that taxes of some form are needed. There are many alternatives to an income tax that leave much more room for personal liberties and less government intrusion on personal lives. The income tax is about control, and the government's appetite will not be satisfied. Due to Tea Party and immigration protests getting most of the national spotlight, a march on Wall Street was all but missed by national media this past week. The demonstrators voiced frustration on the bailouts of big banks, and that the issue of too big to fail had not been resolved. Here are a few scenes.
If I did that, if he did that, we'd be in jail. All right? They call it a racket, a scam, and we'd be in jail. They got away with it, and they got bonuses to boot.
When the top 1% of wealth in this country controls political decisions, when the money that comes straight out of banks goes to bonuses instead of taking care of some of the problems that we need, and that same money goes to pay for the politicians that make those decisions, people should be damn annoyed.
Estimated to be in excess of 10,000 people, protesters invaded bank lobbies to deliver a letter requesting a meeting with the CEOs in order to air their grievances. Representatives took the letter from angry protesters, but otherwise had no comment. Mexican President Felipe Calderón denounced Arizona's new immigration enforcement law as racist. But if one reviews Mexico's own laws, hypocrisy comes to mind. In Mexico, if an illegal immigrant gets caught, it's a felony, punishable with 2 years in prison. A second offense will get you 10 years. Visa violators can receive a 6-year sentence. Mexico can also arbitrarily deport foreigners they deem detrimental to economic or national interests. Mexico's immigration policies are much more harsh than Arizona's new law, but the Mexican president feels quite comfortable calling the people of Arizona racist. According to a recent Gallup poll, the federal government is one of the brightest spots in the nation's hiring picture. Significantly outpacing private sector hiring, federal expansion is on the move. On the other side of the coin, state and local governments are letting workers go and reducing pay. The federal government's seemingly unendless power to borrow and print money provides a distinct spending advantage over state and local governments. Nothing lasts forever, and when Washington can't borrow on the cheap, the system will fall in on itself. It will be toughest on the average working American. As European leaders are nearing agreement on a bailout for Greece, the IMF has agreed to loan $30 billion to the struggling country. As the U.S. funds 20% of the IMF, that means Americans are on the hook for at least $6 billion. This IMF loan is also subordinated to existing Greek debt, mostly held by large multinational banks. This allows the banks to be paid back first with the IMF loan, leaving the IMF and you holding the bag. As the largest debtor country in the world, it's ironic that we put ourselves into more debt to bail out another country. According to documents distributed to Senate offices by a Fed official, the Federal Reserve is privately lobbying against a bipartisan Senate amendment that would open the central bank to an audit by the Government Accountability Office. The Fed's strategy is to back weaker alternative bills that maintain their ability to act in secret. So far, these attempts by the Fed have failed to water down the transparency proposals. But they will keep trying. 1 year ago, ICN reported that the Fed hired Enron's chief lobbyist to fight the Audit the Fed bill. Anything done in secret is susceptible to corruption. The Audit the Fed bill is primarily about bringing the Federal Reserve out of the shadows. Initially reported to be the biggest FBI bust of domestic terrorists in recent years, prosecutors are struggling to keep the 9 people arrested in the Hutaree Militia case in jail until their trial begins. Last week, a federal judge ruled that the government failed to persuade the court that defendants must be detained until trial. During the bail hearing testimony, FBI Special Agent Leslie Larson stated she was the agent in charge of the 2-year investigation. She was unable to answer many of the questions she was asked, such as whether any of the weapons seized from Hutaree members were illegal. The judge reprimanded prosecutors for not preparing their witness. The U.S. Attorney has appealed the decision to release the accused on bail pending trial. Due to the nature of the case, an appeals judge decided they must remain in jail until there's been a ruling, which is expected later this month. And finally, over the past year, ICN has been following the growth of Americans' dependence on food stamps. In spring of 2009, there were 32 million receiving benefits from the Food Assistance Program. As of February of this year, that number has grown to nearly 40 million, or 1 in 8 Americans needing food stamps. The program costs taxpayers $60 billion a year and is expected to increase in 2011. So many Americans dependent on the federal government to eat shows the poor condition of our country. Thanks for joining us this week. At ICN, we believe that this country can be turned around and put back on the right track. It will take an informed America to accomplish that goal. Please share our channel with your friends and family. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. From all of us at Informed Citizen News, see you next time.